All right, friends, it's time to give you loyal listeners a discount on protein powder. You may or may not know, but I launched my very first protein powder 2 years ago. It's a grass-fed beef isolate with only 3 ingredients: grass-fed beef, either organic cacao or organic vanilla, and organic monk fruit. Now, if you don't want any of the added flavor and sweeteners, you can also just get unflavored. And no matter what flavor you choose, you're getting over 23 grams of protein per scoop, which is going to keep you full and satisfied between meals. I love starting my day with a Fab4 smoothie and breaking my fast with that much protein. It makes a serious difference in my cravings and blood sugar balance the rest of the day, and I've seen it with my clients as well. Now, I never thought I'd own a product company, but when I got pregnant with Sebastian, I realized the majority of protein powders were chemically extracted or enzymatically extracted, and I wanted to use heat and water only. I wanted minimal ingredients because we don't need those emulsifiers, fillers, or added vitamins, minerals, and probiotics. All of those additions increase the chances that it's not going to work for your body, whether it be bloating, digestion issues. I just wanted pure, clean protein to keep you full and satisfied so you could build the most delicious Fab4 smoothie. And I have to say, I'm pretty proud of the flavor. If you take a look at our reviews on Amazon, you'll see 5-star reviews for flavor. And that is key, because if you don't love your Fab4 smoothie and you don't love drinking your protein powder, you're not going to do it. It won't become a habit, and it's consistency that outpaces everything. So if you're here and you're listening and you want to give our protein powder a try, use the code podcast5 for $5 off your order. And let me know if you love it. My favorite ways to apply this protein powder is in my Fab4 smoothie, making freezer fudge, making chocolate milk, making hot chocolate, and throwing the unflavored into all my kids' baked goods. So let me know how you use it. Let me know if you love it, and share this podcast deal with your friends. Jennifer Struby and Kay DeVere are the experts behind the Instagram and kids course Tech Wise Littles. Kay has been in education for 12 years, first a teacher and now as an educational therapist. In her private practice, she specializes in early literacy skills, executive functioning skills, and the connection between sensory integration and learning. When not working with her students, she can be found at the beach with her husband and their pup, chasing their 1-year-old twins. Jennifer is an educator and a licensed family therapist, specializing in perinatal psychology and the brain's first imprints in life. She worked for 20 years in education, providing social, emotional, and academic support to students of all ages. She holds 3 master's degrees and has written 4 books. She's a wife, a toddler mom, and an outdoor enthusiast. Their course, Raising Tech-Wise Littles, is an amazing course for setting boundaries when it comes to screen time and figuring out what's best for you and your family. They're also offering our listeners 30% off using the code Kelly30off. So let's welcome to the show, learn all of their tips and tricks, and if you're interested in more, go take that course. Welcome back to the show, you guys. I'm so excited to have Kay and Jennifer on the show with me today. They are the founders of Tech Wise Littles, which is, something that I find so important. We were just talking before the show about screen time with kids and just the knee-jerk reaction to hand your kid a phone when they're flipping out at a restaurant, or to reward them with screen time. And I just need the experts in the room, and these ladies are those experts. So we're going to learn from them. But before we get started, I want to know how you guys met and decided to start Tech Wise Littles and your business.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having us. First of all, Kay and I met several years ago. Combined, we have over 30 years experience in education, starting our careers as classroom teachers, and now we both work as educational therapists, and that's the venue through which I met Kay. I work at a private school here in Santa Barbara, California, and she runs a private practice here in Santa Barbara. And together, we mostly work with middle school parents, a time where the teen brain is so entrenched in the tech world, right? From social media to video games. And we've spent years consulting with families in this demographic, with concerns of focus and ADHD. And, my teen can't have an in-person conversation anymore. They just want to text their friends or even text me, and social media use. And then pre-pandemic and Kay in the pandemic, we both became new moms. And as you know, Kelly, so intimately with your own amazing nutrition career, the mom lens changes you. You start to pivot a bit. You take the expertise you've been using maybe with older kids and adults, and you bring that own lens to your children, both as a professional and then as a mother. I have a 3-year-old toddler girl, and I'm also cooking 5 months prego here. And Kay has twin 1.5-year-old twin boys. And we saw as moms immediately how fascinated our children were with these bright, shiny objects from our phone. And while in our day job, we've been counseling families of teens, in our guts as mothers, we saw the tech conversation was happening too late. It's not just a teenage conversation anymore. Babies have selfies on day one or on FaceTime, when they're home from the hospital. And that's an amazing opportunity for us as parents because we are pioneers. We're first generation parents in this digital world. And that can be really exciting and a little bit overwhelming. And so that's why we started TechWise Littles. I called Kay in January and I said, I have this idea. And she had actually been brewing the same idea. And we were like, this is synchronicitous. As moms, we wanted honest and simple tech advice for ourselves for those early years. And we started crunching all the research and looking at all the data. And there was no simple, easy guide for raising digital natives for those first 5 years, which is a huge window of growth opportunity for the brain. 90% of the brain grows by age 5. So this is such an amazing time in development. And all the tech talk seemed to be focused on later. And we really believed in our guts it's important to teach healthy tech to littles, to talk about that from day one and to set those healthy boundaries now so your future lives as a teenage parent can be easier. So that's a little bit of our journey birthing our kiddos as well as this project together.
Oh, I think it's so timely. I mean, as a new mom, obviously, of children under 5, I am so grateful that you guys decided to create this course, share this online, have the conversation. I would say what I've learned in the nutrition space is exactly what you're saying. It's a lot harder when a child has grown up a certain way and then in their teenage years or their middle school age, 12, 13, you're going, no, we're not going to use the phone anymore. You're not going to get screens anymore. The kind of setbacks and like pulling back and creating strong boundaries after they've had sort of a free for all for a certain amount of time seems a lot harder, at least from my standpoint, when it comes to nutrition. I can only imagine that is the same in every type of dopamine drive behavior, whether that's like screen time or sweets or whatever it is that makes us feel good. So how do we start to set boundaries? What did the research tell you first and foremost in regards to what is screen time? How is it affecting our kids?
The research is still actually kind of catching up with how fast content and screens are changing. It's changed so much, and it's kind of the research is just a little bit of a step behind. And there's really big studies coming out this year that we're really excited to get our hands on. But in particular, there's really strong research around background noise in general. And that research is very, very clear. And there's a really great study by McMillan and Safran that was done in 2016 that's pretty much stating if there's background noise on, so a TV on, and an average American household has a TV on to 5 hours a day, which is just kind of mind-blowing because we just kind of leave it on in the background. It's, you kind of forget about it. That when the TV is on in the house, a child is getting less exposure to language, or because there's this background noise going on. So you can kind of use that same analogy for if a child was actually watching the TV, they're getting less exposure to communicating with their peers, communicating with their siblings, communicating with their family members, or playing with their toys or being outside. So you can kind of use that same analogy that when they're in front of a screen, it's not necessarily that screen, what's on the screen is terrible. That's actually not it. It's what is that child missing when they're in front of the screen, those interactions with the real world. And like Jennifer was talking about, 0 to 5, this is why we picked this age. You know, we work with middle school kids, so we could have picked that age, and we're like, no, we need to be preventative. We're new moms. Like, this should be preventative information. We really want parents to have this because so much of the brain is developing in 0 to 5. So when those children are losing those interactions with the real world, it is actually affecting brain development. So that's where the research is really clear around background noise. And you can kind of take that and make that connection to then how a screen experience would affect a child. And like we said, it's we all kind of know and have a feeling, but because so handheld devices are 15 years old. Mm-hmm. You know, we remember when we can age ourselves, like we all just had kind of normal cell phones in high school, not smartphones. So right. We're really, really on the cutting edge of dealing with this as parents right now. There's not, like, we can't look to older generations and say, you know, what did you do? So that's some of the research that is really clear to us. And so, yeah, so there's a really strong correlation between what a child is doing in their first 5 years and how it affects the rest of their lives. So we really think we can be preventative with this. We can really give parents those tools in the early years.
Absolutely. So when it comes to setting goals to have boundaries so that this time isn't compromised, their potential playtime, interaction time isn't compromised by screens, what does the research tell us is like a gold standard? Or I know you say it's just coming out and we're at I guess at the cutting edge of when the research is really going to tell us what's happening here. But what should we be doing as parents? How should we be setting these boundaries? When and how should we be using phones and TVs with our kids?
Great question. We started TechWise Littles because we heard two major camps when it came to screen time, and particularly that lovely unsolicited parenting advice in screen time. And there's one camp that will say, okay, screens are drugs. Your child's brain is going to rot. How dare you give them screens? I thought you were organic. I thought you were whole child based. And then there's the other camp, which will say like, screens are miraculous. Like every kid has an iPad, so it must be fine. Like how in the world am I going to get anything done unless I hand my kid tech? And, oh, it doesn't matter for littles. It's just cute cartoons. It's teenage world where tech gets crazy and scary. And, oh, or we all watched TV growing up and look, we were fine. And as Kay and I started crunching through the research and the data and just, seeing what trends we saw with our own clients over the last few decades, we believed in a third option. And we want to give parents a third option where you're not fearful of tech or obsessed with tech. It's what we call middle of the road parenting, right? Every family structure is different. Every child is different. And so, if you look at simply counting screen time minutes, which is something we can chat about later, it's actually something we don't advocate for. We advocate for counting other minutes in the day. We don't think it's realistic to go live in the woods and, unplug for the rest of your life. We live in a modern world, but how can we make tech work in a healthy way with our kids? And how can we as parents have confidence and clarity around screen time? So when we do use tech in our family, whether it's together or when we're giving kids that solo, tech experience, we can feel clear and we can drop the guilt because we know we're giving them the best content around tech, or we're using tech at the best time of day, or we're using the best type of shows. So that's really what, our research focuses on, is like the 5 W's we talk about of screen time, like the who, what, where, when, why, how are you using it, rather than just, screen time minutes.
I love that. Already my wheels are turning. Like, I do want to know what's the best content, what's the best time of day, what are the best types of shows, give me the 5 W's, who, what, where, when, and why, so that I can feel confident that my kids are, not compromising their outdoor playtime, but that this is a these are solid set boundaries around what is going to be growth, style, educational, maybe fun, happy. Like my favorite thing to do is to look at Bash watching a cartoon and hear him giggle hysterically on the couch while I'm pouring a cup of coffee on a Saturday morning. I'm like, he looks forward to Saturday morning because he knows when his brother goes to bed, he gets a little screen time and he loses it. And I'm just like, it's cute. I take videos of it all the time. Like I want those giggles. So, but I need to know, like, is Curious George like the rotting his brain?
What you just described is such an amazing screen experience because there's kind of a routine around it. He knows that this is a predictable part of his world. It's not something that he's getting as a reward. It's not something he's getting when he throws a tantrum, which we have a whole part in our course about because that's its own beast in itself. He kind of knows, oh, when my brother goes to bed, this is the part of my day that's coming next. And it's a part of the day that my mom and dad have decided. So I just loved that example right there.
I can thank my parents for that. I watched no TV unless it was the weekend and I was like, how do I do screen time? I'll just do what my mom did. So
we talk about that in the course too. There's different types of screen families. Like we have all these different examples of schedules. Like you're kind of describing you're a weekend screen family, and there might be families that are intermittent. It's throughout the week, but this is how the schedule we're going to kind of sit on. We go through examples like that. But the huge thing that you said is it's a part of a routine. It's not just a ad hoc babysitter because my child's having a moment. It's part of a routine that is healthy in your household. And getting into the who, what, where, when, why. So the who is, we really talk about this a lot in our course, that screens evoke an emotion. I'm just going to keep going off of your example that he's giggling. So the who is the child connecting with about the show. So the show is a 2D world, and 0 to 5 is so vital to connect the 2D world. We want in 0 to 5 to connect that 2D world to the 3D world as much as possible. So taking that show and then him coming up and giggling, the who is the connection. So you saying, tell me what happened in the show. Why are you giggling like that? Like that's right there. If you can't sit with your child, which is called co-viewing, which would be like the optimal, but it's just not realistic all the time.
Right.
Connecting with your child before, during, even like kind of snuggling up to him next to, during Curious George and be like, oh, what are you loving right now? Or, oh, does that remind you of something you saw at the zoo? Like making those connections, and we give a bunch of language in the course. That's the who are they with, who are they connecting with? Because the show's evoking emotion, and a little kid isn't meant to go through emotions by themselves. No one really is. So it's connecting about the show.
Okay.
The what device, I'm going to just keep going with your brilliant example. A TV screen across the room is always going to be the best option because it's best for your child's developing eyes rather than a device right here in front of their face. And if you only have an iPad in the moment, even putting it in a stand across the table is going to be better than having it in their lap. The content we talked about, so there's so much that goes into this, but you want the show to be as slow as possible in the sense that the least stimulation coming from the show. So think about the room you're in right now, the noises you're hearing, like the normal day-to-day that a child hears is what we want them to be used to as their brain's developing. So the more stimulation that's coming from the show, the fast-paced colors, the scene changes, the background music, that's like actually meant to keep our children really mesmerized and excited. Too much of that's going to have them expect that more in their day-to-day life.
Which makes it harder on the parents to be the show.
Yeah. Harder for us. And so that's where like slower is better. And we have a whole list of what we call tech recs on like our show recommendations, but and so I'll keep going through the who, what, where, and why. But just a note on that, like some kids just have their absolute favorite shows. Like that doesn't mean you can't have your child watch their absolute favorite show. It means connect with them about it. Make sure it's on a TV screen across the room. The when is trying to keep it away from bedtime. Like we say 60 to 90 minutes at least, like keep that space between naps and bedtime. Just it's the best so they can wind down. And we know that as adults, like we're all awful at it. Like,
right.
I'm really trying to keep my phone downstairs when I fall asleep because I notice I sleep better when
Sure.
don't have my phone. I mean, we all know that. but yeah, so that's the when. And then the why. Why is it are we on the screen for entertainment? Are we on the screen for communication? Are we FaceTiming with grandma, which is its whole own bucket? Like that's a whole different world because there's someone on the other side of the screen that knows them and connects with them. Are we on screens for communication, entertainment, or education purposes like school? So you can see I'm going on and on. There's a lot that goes into screens. So like Jennifer said earlier, like we're not about counting screen time minutes. Like we're about looking at the whole screen picture that's going to support your child's development. So it's really big. We get really passionate about it.
No, it's good. Like I mean, in looking at the example and looking at your recommendations, like I do feel really good about when we do it. Like on the weekends when his baby brother Toshin goes to bed, because I didn't do screen time with Bash at all. We like didn't have the TV on at all until between 18 months and 2 years. And then it was Blippi. But we can talk about Blippi and how you feel about Blippi. But it's just like the when I feel really good about. The why I feel like, okay, it's entertainment for him. It's not a Band-Aid. It's not like to shut him up or anything like that. I think it's on the wall always. It's not like on an iPad or a phone. But the flashing bright lights and the music, like that does give me pause about Curious George. He is like a rowdy little monkey and there's a lot going on in that show versus even though I begrudgingly said Blippi, like Blippi was standing in a park pouring sand from one bucket to the next and Bash loved it. And there was no background noise. You know, there's the intro song and the outro song, but then it's just him being kind of zany in nature or in a kids museum and showing the kids how he's playing with the toys. And so interestingly, now that you're even saying this, I'm going, well, Blippi actually wasn't as bad as I thought Blippi was because it's not this fast-paced cartoon that maybe is making him feel like he's at a rave or at a club or something. So how are you guys making those decisions around the show and picking the right show? I know you have Rex in your course, but are there any offhand where you're like, that's great. This is my favorite from 1 to, or like 2, or is there a time when they should be starting screen time?
So Blippi, I mean, he's everywhere, right? And I think he's a great example because he's a real person. He's doing real life things and he's doing it in real life pacing. Anytime you switch just from real life into the cartoon world, you're going to get, those extra production, the extra sound effects. And we're not saying cartoons bad, people good. But in general, if you have a choice, go with real life people, real life animals. You mentioned that you filmed him giggling. Home videos are naturally filmed at real life pace. And that's an easy way, like, if you're in a bind and you have your phone, rather than putting on a YouTube, which will constantly autoplay to the next video unless you turn off that recommendation, show a home video of, your family together or people they know that you'll get those giggles out of them from. But it's helping build a connection to their real world.
Yeah, I love that. That's already, Bash loves to see videos of himself and his brother, and that's an easy thing to show. And especially like if you're in a car and they're waiting for dad to go grab something in a store and they're starting to get antsy. I'm now realizing that screen time is, throughout the week is more than just these, 2 45-minute sessions on the weekend when Toshin goes down for his nap in the morning. And I do show him home videos on my phone. I'm not necessarily showing him YouTubes or anything like that, but I know that as he gets older, screen time is going to increase. So how do I continue to keep these healthy boundaries? And I know you said you don't count screen time, but what are you counting? And how do I ensure that that the whole day doesn't get lost to a screen?
We are counting the play minutes, so play and movement. And your child should be getting, and that can include their time at school, like with recess and moving, and then sleep.
All right.
Make sure they're getting sleep because their brain is rejuvenizing and moving or continuing to grow as much as possible with the adequate sleep. So play that connection with the real world. So if your child's getting a ton of connection with the real world in the day, with other humans and playing and climbing and jumping and falling, scraping their knees, giggling and having those experiences, an hour of screen time isn't going to all of a sudden delete all of that.
Right.
So often people are like, well, is this many minutes okay? And we're like, what's the rest of the day look like? Are they getting, so Jennifer and I, we've talked about this example. Actually, 30 minutes of screen time right before bed, that's super overstimulating. It's actually going to be worse than an hour in the middle of the day of a kind of a realistic show or a really slow paced show. Like there are some more cartoony ones, like off the top of my head, like Puff and Rock, Tumbleleaf, Stella and Sam, that are almost look like a book is being turned. Like it's so slow and like pastel-y, and almost looks like a book being read to a child. So if you did that for an hour in the middle of the day, that's going to be actually like not as bad, quote, I don't want to say bad or good, but the right before bed 30 minutes overstimulating is going to be a trickier time to do screen. So when we're looking at the day, are they getting their sleep? Are they getting their movement, their play, their interaction with the real world is really the big question we should be talking about. Those really like brain enriching activities. Because Jennifer and I know, being in education for so long, sincerely, that is what gets your child ahead in life, is connecting with your child. Like you can throw any guilt out the window of what you're doing as a parent if you're connecting, providing touch, providing cuddles, giggles, play, interaction. Like that's the richness that will help your child succeed in relationships, in school, in challenges. Like that's the brain science. And Jennifer studied this in her one of her master's degrees. So we have the experience to know that this is really what's going to help your child in life.
I love that. The power of showing up. Yeah, definitely. So then maybe Jennifer, I'd love for you to take the next question. When it comes to being there for our children, providing that relationship, providing that supportive role in their life, that friend, that constant, what does the research tell us is like the amount of time that we should dedicate per day or should aim for? Because I know personally, as a working mom, full-time working mom, full-time mom, the chef, food supply for baby T, and, basically trying to do it all, I feel guilty when the day ends and I'm like, did I give my child 30 minutes of uninterrupted, phone away, I am here style play? And when I'm not, mom guilt is through the roof. Is there any research that points to like amount of time, or what we should be doing with our kids, or if there's a best time of day to be doing this kind of stuff?
Great questions. And, Kay and I are both full-time working moms as well. So we get it. My toddler just started preschool, and, in the pandemic, I was only working remotely, and now she gets home at 4:30, and those are long days, and, bedtime's at 7:30. So that's my window, and I'm cooking, and we're doing bath time and getting all of that in. And so there isn't a set time. A. B, it's about quality over quantity always. And then C, it's about repair as parents. So I'll kind of go through those. So quality, when you're cooking, can you incorporate your child into that cooking experience? Yes, it makes it more messy. But
I love that. That's how I do it.
But rather than sending them away, give them the kid-friendly knife if they're of age, and, incorporate them. I'm sure you're a pro at all of this. Anytime you can bring your child into your world when we're supposed to be getting stuff done, in that window of after work time, try to do that. And then you mentioned a perfect example. If you can do 10 minutes, great. If you can do 20 minutes, awesome. If you can do 30, superstar. Put your own phone away and give your child like your full attention and follow their lead. There's so much pressure in modern parenting that we have to be this entertainment circus. And the high-tech world really feeds into that. Like, gosh, I have to entertain my child all day long, which means I need to enrich them all day long and I need to educate them all day long. And I can't do all that. So take some of that off my plate. When really your kid just needs a witness to their play. You know, they just want to say, hey, mommy, here's my block. And like, look and make eye contact with someone. You know, eye contact, eyes are the windows to the soul, yes, but they're the windows to the brain in this early development here. So when your kids look at you, just twinkle back. It seems like nothing, but it's actually building neuronal connections that, you know, give them those social development skills, develop those early executive functioning skills, which is like the primary way to get them ahead. You know, ABCs and 1, 2, 3s do not get them ahead for kindergarten. Let us tell you as educators, your kindergarten teacher will love you for it, but what gets them ahead is feeling connected to a primary caregiver in their life and feeling seen. It's the same needs we have as adults. We just want to be seen. We want to know when we giggle, someone giggles back. And then the repair. We're not perfect every day. We're not perfect most days. So on those days where you're just ready to pull your hair out, or maybe your voice raised too much for your liking, or, you know, you don't have that time, extra time to be one-on-one, use your words and explain that to your kid. Mommy really wants to be here for you, and she has to do this right now. As soon as I'm done, I'm going to come and we'll do whatever you want together for 20 minutes. Or just teaching your kid the I'm sorry skills. Like, I'm sorry I can't do this with you. I really wish I could, and we will do this together. Because it's not about being perfect. It's about repairing and owning those times where we can't be the super parent that we all would love to be, and letting that be okay for our kids, because then they don't feel like they need to be perfect for us.
I love that. It is definitely something that we've all experienced as moms, is wanting to be two places at one time and cloning ourselves so we can be the working version of ourselves and the mom version of ourselves. And that just verbalizing that we need to, that we're sorry, that we want to be there, but we can't always be there. I really like that. That's great. When it comes to that one-on-one time and getting your kids involved, I mean, you're preaching to the choir. I'd much rather have Bash jump in his kid's tower and help me make dinner, because I feel like we're hanging out together, than for me to do dinner and for him to play alone. But what does the research tell us in regards to playtime when it is alone?
It's perfectly fine for them to play alone. It's developing imagination when your child is playing alone. And Jennifer kind of touched on it. Like, children want to know you're there, like to be acknowledged, but that doesn't mean you need to drop everything and go and jump into the blocks with them. It's kind of like, hey, you're there, mom, dad, you're there. And so when they're in their own worlds with, you know, kind of open-ended play toys, that's when they're going to be developing what Jennifer touched on, what we call executive functioning skills, which is a term that covers organization, planning, thinking through, attention skills. These are like the nitty-gritty of what Jennifer and I work on every day with kids. But actually that independent play is fostering that in 0 to 5, because in order to think ahead into the future in our minds, like plan as adults, you have to have a picture in your mind of what that is in the future that you're going to do. And that develops with play.
I love that.
Fantastic question. So 0 guilt for your child playing independently. They just want to know that there's just someone that like loves them and is around. So if they're going, look, I did this, it's like, I see you, I make eye contact with you, check in, and there should be 0 guilt around having your child get into their own world. It's actually magical. And like what you were talking about with cooking, my boys, they're like, what's become one of their favorite activities, doing laundry with me, because I mean, it takes double amount of the time, but I'm like, I'm doing this while you're awake. They love putting the things in the basket and then they take them all out and they dump it again. And it's an absolute win-win for me. And it's been a little bit of a sanity saver that's something we do in their wake window. So it's not something I do when they're napping. So I know it sounds like that's, if you for cooking, that's kind of like been a little thing that I love with my boys. And it's a win-win all around.
No, and I think you're showing them a great example too. There's all this pressure to like play and be present and get on Pinterest and find out what educational like little things you can do in your house, whether it's with like paper clips and scissors and you're creating these masterpieces. But I think the reality is them seeing you do the things that you have to do and do those every single day, whether that's cooking or laundry or cleaning, that is like going to be their future. And they're just not going to be able, it doesn't need to be when they're sleeping, but there is this pressure as parents to do your work and play with your kids. And then when your kids go to sleep, Chris and I have been guilty of this. Our kids go to bed and then we're like, we're going to spend an hour and a half cleaning up the house and doing the laundry and doing the dishes and getting ready for the next day. But then we're totally gassed because we finally plop down on the couch or we finally sit down to like have a bite. And it's like, what time is it? And, so I eat with the kids because I can't eat that late. But for him, it's like, he likes to know that the kids have had a full day. He's done all what he calls his Kenny Bears, which if you have any of Richard Scarry's books, Kenny Bear does a lot of dishes. He does his Kenny Bears, he cleans up, and then he calms his body and like has food or like reads or watches a show. And again, that like it gets so late. So I love that example that you're bringing kids into those like everyday experiences instead of putting them in front of a screen so you can get laundry done.
Toddlers are natural born helpers, and we as parents talk them out of it. And then we wonder when they're teenagers why they're not helpful around the house. But toddlers want to go fetch something for you. They want to feel important. They want to feel like big kids. And so it's such an amazing time to capitalize on that. Like, let them fetch, the grapes from the fridge or whatever it is you need, because that will build their helpfulness and build their responsibility and help you out. So you're not doing all of your work in that golden hour and a half after bedtime. And then in terms of what Kay was saying with independent play, there's also the modern parenting pressure that, they can't be bored.
Yeah.
Whereas boredom is brain gold for kids. It is when you hit against boredom, and if you can learn the skill to push through boredom, that's the seed of all creativity, all entrepreneurship, all out of the box thinking. And we talk our kids out of it because we want to like hyperactivity them. Like, oh, okay, let's go to the next thing and the next thing. When they most need for kindergarten and for school ready skills, free, unstructured playtime. Like, that's it. With witnesses and hugs and eye contact along the way.
That makes me feel so much better as a mom because half the time, if I have something that I'm trying to get done, I will open a drawer in the kitchen and just say, yeah, do what you want. And Chris or Bash calls it a job site. And he will literally pull every clean piece of Tupperware, glass Pyrex, stainless steel cup, like his little smoothie cups. He's making towers, but he'd much rather play with things that aren't his toys and my space than anything else. So that's just really good to hear because I think we do have this pressure to look up fun activities on Pinterest or to buy the newest toy because it's a brain developing toy or to help them learn how to play with something, like teach them the whole entire process. But I do want to get back to the screen time talk because I know you guys are experts in this space specifically. I mean, in child development, it sounds like in general, but can we talk about, you mentioned there are types of families and how families use screen time. Can you give me a couple of examples of what these like family examples are you're talking about?
Definitely. So there might be some families that have screen time as part of an afternoon activity when the children get home from school. Perfectly fine. Jennifer and I are not saying everyone should go be screen free. We don't feel that that's the best way to go about talking about screens with kids. We don't want screens to be taboo. They're part of our world. They're not going anywhere. There's so much benefit from them. I mean, right? Especially in the past what are we, year and a half into the pandemic, like we have to have grace around moving away from being a screen-free family. So this is an example. Your family might say, screens are an activity that's a choice in your afternoon. So this is an example we put in our courses, between 4 and 5, you have the option for one show. And it's allowing your child, they might probably take the option, they might not, but it's kind of that language around this is a part of a routine that you can choose. And it's more predictable, it's consistent. We talk about visual schedules, like allowing your child to know this is an option. And what that does is it takes away a lot of the battles around it. Because screens provide so much stimulation to adults and children, it's really hard to get off of it. It's really hard, and it's, we don't blame children. Like, you are giving them this really exciting stimulation, and then asking them to get off of it. It can evoke a lot of emotion and a tantrum. So if they know it's coming and it's predictable that this is an option, there's going to be less battles to get off of it and move on to the potentially next activity. So that's an option. It could be an option in the day. We talked about the weekend screen family, like they only know it's a weekend activity. And then we also, there are times that there's complete exceptions. Your child's sick at home, like it might be a movie day. We are big fans of movies, by the way. Movies have storylines. You usually cuddle up with your kiddo. How bringing that 2D experience to the 3D world, you're often like talking about it later with your family. You, most of the time, even if some families watch, Frozen on repeat, like everyone's singing the songs afterwards. So we are big fans of movies, because anytime you're taking that screen experience and making a connection with your child, it's a win. What we hope for in teaching parents is that screens isn't an isolating experience. It's happening all by themselves. Even if they're watching it by themselves, connect with them about it. So you could just be like a movie family night. I know some families that we've talked to, that we've worked with, that are like, okay, we want to really pull back on the screen. So we're like a movie. We do movies, and we do movies on Saturday nights, and that's our screen time. So there's a lot of different options. So there's different ways to go about it. And in the course, there's like, this is one option, here's another, and you can kind of take it and mold it to your family, because we can't just say this is what you should do as a family, because we don't know what's going on in your home. We don't know what type of caretaker situation you have either, which is a whole nother conversation. Tech has kind of become part of our parenting village, because we're parenting farther away from our family. And so we can't say to you, don't use this, when you may be single parenting or be in a situation that it's a tool that you use as a parent. So we're really trying to give families options, and then educating them on kind of if you're using screens in your home, this is the best option for your child.
I like flexibility and light structure personally when it comes to everything in my life, whether that's like my daily schedule, my food, lifestyle, like how I eat, to all of that. Like, I think rigidity and really strong boundaries makes us feel pressure, and we feel like, again, like it's taboo. We have to have it. We want to have it. And so I do like that. Is there anything in the research that you're like, look, we're really flexible. There's different types of families. There's different types of screen experiences we can offer to our kids. But are there some like tried and true rules in regards to when a child should start watching screen time at like an appropriate age, when you would start using screens with kids and when you wouldn't? Is there anything in particular when it comes to a length of time in front of a screen or anything like that our parents who are listening can take away and say like, okay, that's just a nice little thing for me to think about when it comes to this?
Okay, so we follow the guidelines based on the American Academy of Pediatrics, or the AAP. And so what they really recommend is no screens under age 2, and then from age 2 to 5, around an hour of high quality educational content for kiddos. Our addition or spin on this, adds in things like video chatting as well as co-viewing opportunities. So for video chatting, which research along with the American Academy of Pediatrics say is the best time of screen time, yay, because we all used it a ton in the pandemic. It's because there's a real live person who loves your child on the other end and who can interact with them in real time, make that eye contact, albeit through a screen, laugh when they laugh, interact with them. It's that connection piece again. We're making tech a point of connection with families and friends. So for 0 to age 6, when grandma wants to FaceTime baby, the baby's eyes are really new, still developing. So you can show the baby, and then we suggest flipping the phone. So the baby sees the back of the screen, and your loved ones can still see baby ooh and coo and do all of their lovely baby things.
In this camp, I'm going to just add in this camp because I had around my boys were like 7 months when we really started diving into this, and we noticed they were kind of like trying to follow the screen in FaceTime and almost becoming agitated by it and flipping it. Your loved ones are able to see, like my husband's family's in Utah, so they were able to see my boys. We put it on a stand, but my boys weren't like grabbing at the phone. So it kind of just became a way that family could still see the boys for longer periods of time without the screen being in their face. Because they can't, before 6 months, they can't actually recognize, like Jennifer was saying, all the good things about FaceTime. They can't actually recognize the person on the other side of the screen. So there's no point in having that screen in your baby's eyes under 6 months. I just want to add that in.
That's great advice.
Thanks, Kay. And then, yeah, for it's like 6 to 18 months, if you're going to use tech, we do recommend only FaceTime and or be present with your child for that co-viewing experience. Age 2 to 3, you can start introducing those slower paced shows, ideally on a TV across the room. And we want to hold off on the iPad if we can until age 3 or any other handheld device, because it's interactive, it's super stimulating. You touch the screen and something pops up. And the sooner our children learn that, oh, the world is literally at the touch of their fingertips, they will want, parents to be at the touch of their fingertips. And that makes life harder for you because life is not that immediate, right? And life is not that flashy. So the longer we can wait for the introduction of the iPad, the better. From age 3 to 5, there are really, high quality apps, and we break them down in our course into a few different categories based on, creativity, such as, the painting apps or the apps that look like easels and let your kids create on them, or some of the language-based apps. And Rex for language-based is actually fewer text, fewer words, where, they might be read a book and they get to press one word of the book rather than a worksheet looking like app. We want to stay away from worksheets in general when they're little. They're branded as educational, but they're not so educational, right? And through age 5, we just highly recommend this co-viewing experience. In our course, we call it Teams Tech, and we have an acronym that we go through with Teams. But either before, during, or after the show, making that eye contact with your kid, giving them the little cuddle, and we have scripts to spark conversation during or after the show to really help that learning click, because things are branded as educational, like I said, but really you are what makes anything educational for your child. A real life person, mirroring them, giggling with them, checking in with them is what grows their brain. So those are just some guidelines for the minute counters, because I get it. I can be a minute counter too. So we do follow the AAP.
That is great information and boundaries for our listeners. What about when you want to start having a conversation with your child around screen time? At what age is it appropriate to start telling them that? I mean, obviously, when I'm telling Sebastian he's done with Curious George, you guys alluded to it, there is sometimes a bit of a tantrum or a meltdown, or I try to tell him like 5 or 10 minutes before it's over, hey, bud, this is the last one. Just a reminder, this is the last Curious George. And like right before I see it ending, the more I can remind him, the easier that transition is. But I do want to have a broader conversation with him. When is it appropriate to say, hey, look, this is really fun. Screens are flashy, they're bright, they make us giggle and laugh. But we also want to be outside, or we also want to be doing all the other things that we need to do. When do we start having those conversations around what is quote unquote healthy for screen time for our family? And I'd love to just dip into that too with the junior high and high school kids, or the adolescent age clients you both have too.
That's great questions. With the little ones, as soon as they're starting to, my boys are 16 months right now, and they are in the age where FaceTime is kind of their primary screen. And I'll start with the younger age. We use an acronym called BAY. That's B is for boundaries, A is it's an adult tool, and Y is you're in charge as the adult. And this is just kind of a acronym for parents to sink in that like this, your children don't know what this tool or device is until you introduce it to them. And they know what it is by how you introduce it to them at this young age. So if you're giving the child it to them as if it's a toy they can play with whenever they want, they're going to think it's a toy they can play with whenever they want. If it's just like handed to them, like you were mentioning at the very beginning of our talk at a restaurant or out, like that it's just anytime, that's just going to become the norm. And if that's the norm for your family, then that's going to be the expectation. So it's going to be harder when you take it away from them. But if it's there's really boundaries around it, that this is mama's tool or dada's tool that I use for work or that we use to communicate with grandma. Like that's the language. This is a tool we use to communicate with grandma and grandpa. This is a tool that we use to communicate with our, auntie or uncle. This is a tool I use for work, and it's your tool. Then that's how they know about it. Like my boys, when they find our phone, they bring it right to my husband and I. It's the most adorable thing in the world. They because we leave them out and they just bring it to us because it's
really
just
cute.
We've used, and it's so cute. But when to start talking about the like this is a part of like your kind of tech health diet, I think when it's becoming entertainment. So like exactly where you're at with your little, this is a part of you can use, we use this in the course too, actually. So this is perfect for your world, but it's just like a diet, just like your health diet. You might have some screen heavy weeks and some screen heavy days, screen heavy years, like the pandemic, like my goodness, like we all had to be on screen so much. And so that's really great language to talk about, just like you might have some sugar heavy days. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have those, then you can pull it back a little bit and think forward to the next week and have a conversation with your little one. Like, hey, we just had a really long road trip and watched all these really great shows. So we're just like, if we had a ton of sugar, we're going to take some time and have that conversation with them, that you're firm on the boundaries, but letting them know that this is what's going to be happening. So same analogy with your diet. And the other huge one is being on the same page with your partner. Like if just in every household, there's someone who's more screen heavy or not. It's just going to be a thing. Mm-hmm. And if one parent is trying to push this and the other wasn't, it's going to be so difficult. So we actually have we have a link on our Instagram, but it's a free tech healthy guide, and it has a partner discussion quiz for any other caretakers that you're raising your kids with, to have a discussion around what goals you want to have, because that's just number one, like us being on the same page as adults. And you can decide together what do you want your household to look like in terms of tech. What do you want? Because again, it's going to be different for every family. And then you asked about as kids get older, the more boundaries you're setting now, you're going to thank yourself as you get older. So a tricky transition is when children are going to school and then devices are part of their daily at school. We've had a bunch of questions about that. Like, we just had a great summer with really strong boundaries, and now the tablet's coming home in the backpack every day, and now all the boundaries are blurred. It's tricky. So that's where you're bringing in this device is being used as an educational tool, of being used for homework versus entertainment versus communication. So I think I want to give parents a lot of grace though with this, because this device is 15 years old. We were told as a society these were educational tools that were helpful, right? Like even like Jennifer and I have seen it in our education. There's been kind of this trend of now everyone's an iPad and it's going to help everyone. And now we're just turning the corner of let's be really intentional about how we use tools. So I think we're at the point now where we can give this philosophy to parents that let's have these boundaries young as we're raising our kids. Because doesn't mean it's not possible to start later. Like if you have a 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old, 10, 12-year-old, it's going to be harder to set the boundaries. You're going to have to be more hard and fast with them and have almost like an interventional situation going on to change how the situation in the house is going, but doesn't mean it's not possible. But we're trying to give that tool earlier, so we're not getting to that point where it can get actually really scary. So yeah, we're all about prevention here.
I like that. I love that you built this course for young children to help young moms. Can you give me an example of, you just mentioned scary. What do you mean by scary when it comes to kids and tech in their adolescence? Like, what are you seeing as behaviors? How is it influencing their mood, maybe their personality, their ability to communicate? Like, what are you seeing in your practice? Because I don't want this conversation to be taken lightly either. Like, if you are the feet on the ground and seeing how these devices have influenced children and their adolescence, and you've obviously been motivated and passionate enough to write a course on preventing it with young children, I think we need to know, like, what's on the other side of too much screen time and how is it affecting these young kids?
Yeah, great question. So, from a parenting perspective, what's on the other side is lots of battles. From a developmental perspective, what's on the other side and what the research with olders and littles is actually becoming really clear on is there is high correlation rates between higher use of tech and lower and slower executive functioning skills. That ability to self-regulate, calm yourself down in a situation, seek out others for help or friendship, plan, organize. A lot of that can get clumped into ADHD like behaviors, and we're seeing skyrocketing rates of kids who, they might know their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, but can they sit in a classroom at age 6 for a prolonged period of developmentally appropriate time with a teacher who's not a full-time entertainment show? It's becoming harder. We're seeing, kids not able to have conversations in middle school. They just want to text their friend, or that face-to-face interaction is becoming harder. Social interactions are changing. Focus is becoming more challenging. Irritability is up. There's tons of studies on, anxiety and depression and social media use, both for teens and adults. The longer time we as adults spend on social media, the worse we feel about ourselves rather than the better. And that is the same for middle schoolers, particularly girls. There's a lot of pressure that's coming in. So we don't take those things lightly. And we specifically don't take the development of those executive functioning skills lightly, because, Harvard has published a study. Numerous other Ivy Leagues have come out with studies that, like, the best predictor of life success, academic success, and relational success is well-developed executive functioning skills. That ability to be flexible in a situation, that ability to be resilient and bounce back when life is hard, that grit, that follow through, that planning. That's what lets you navigate life's curveballs. And those start when they're little. The highest growth of those skills are between age 2 to 4. That's, those are the tantrum years when kids don't know how to express their feelings, and they have very big feelings, and it's us as a parents' job to okay those feelings, help them name those feelings, work through those feelings, and then develop more appropriate ways to express them. And without that parent contact, if kids are just isolated on tech, they're not getting those skills developed. They're not getting that free play developed that we talked about. That's so crucial. They're not hitting up against boredom, which means their creativity, which they're so good at when they're little, is not being fostered to its best ability. And we want kids to be those natural helpers and artists and inventors and entrepreneurs that they are. And we don't want to inhibit that growth. We want to foster it.
Well, you're absolutely doing that with your course and with this information and jumping online and helping parents navigate the screen time, because it is a trade-off. Screen time takes away from those conversations, that free play, that creativity, the growth of that executive function. I can't thank you both enough for being here and building out this course with your multiple years of experience as educators, and just for helping us navigate this. I had a flip phone in high school. So this is, and I think it got taken away because I used all my minutes, but this is a really important conversation, and the screens aren't going away. We do need to have boundaries, and you're helping us do that. So I'm so excited to go take the course and get Chris on board with it as well, because like anything else in parenting, I think having a plan really helps us to stick to our boundaries. So thank you for all the work that you do and for being here on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Kelly. This was such an amazing conversation.
Where can people follow along? Where can they take your course? And you guys actually are giving our listeners an amazing, amazing discount, 30% off to the listeners using Kelly 30 off. So go ahead and tell us where to find you and your courses, and that download will link in the show notes.
You can go to techwiselittles.com, and that's where our course is at. And it talks all about the course and all the different modules. And in the course, we talked about this. You get show recommendations, how to prevent and cope with tech tantrums, the screen scripts. And we talked a lot about language, that action plan to get on the same page with your partners, connecting with your children about shows. All the brain research we talked about, it's all in there. It's a really unique, exciting course. So the code you said, Kelly 30 off, and it's techwiselittles.com. And then also on our Instagram, which is at techwiselittles, there's a link to get our free guide that we talked about that has a discussion prompt for you and your partner to get on the same page, which is really the first place to start. So that's a really fun guide that we've gotten a lot of great feedback on. So we're really excited for it to be in more people's hands.
Definitely. Well, I'm here to help you be a little bit of a megaphone about it, because I think it's really, really important. And I personally need your help. And I know a lot of moms and dads listening do too. So thank you for being here. All your links will be in the show notes. People can find you there. And I will share a little blurb about this on the Insta so people can find you.
Thank you, Kelly. This was wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Be Well by Kelly. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Learn more at bewellbykelly.com and follow me on Instagram at bewellbykelly. I would love if you picked up my books, Body Love and Body Love Every Day. They're sold on Amazon and at all major booksellers.